Hello everyone, in this video, based on the lecture, I'm want to demonstrating how can you use Excel to creating the frequency distribution, relative frequency, percent frequency, and the cumulative frequency and the cumulative percent frequency distribution. And so the data set we're using is the data for the 44 publicly traded companies PE ratio, okay, PE ratio. And so this is the data set. I intentionally give the data set that is not already not in the shape we are looking for, okay. Why is that? So the ideal data set, we want the data starting from the first row and the first column. As you notice that the data I'm offering you here is not starting from the first column and the first row. So therefore, we need to do some adjustment. Okay, let's just first delete the rows that does not contain our data, right? So the first two rows are useless. So we're gonna select the first two rows. Hopefully at least you have some Excel foundation. So as you can, make sure you follow my video to do that, okay? Let me zoom in. So I'm gonna select row 1 and the row 2. To do that, you can see where my mouse is. Click, right, left, click the mouse, and then drag it down. And once you do that, so you can see both first and second row are highlighted. And right click the mouse, and then right click the mouse if you are using PC, and then go into delete. Okay, that is the first step. Now we have one actual column that is blank. We want to delete it as well. So select the column A. Again, move to the top of your Excel, the A here, and then your arrow become like your cross become arrow down. That means you can select the whole column, and you clicked it. And so now all your first column are highlighted. And then move the mouse right down and then right click the mouse and then go into delete. Okay, now this is the data set we are looking for. So they are in the shape. So there's no empty row and empty column before my data set. So this is something I'm looking for. And also it's very important that the data set you have a row called the labels. So those are my labels, right? So they are not my actual observations. So quick before we move on. So help you to remind you what we learned. Say, so here the company. So those are my element or my observations, and the ticker symbol, PE ratio, GICS sector, location of headquarter. So those are my variables, right? So the ticker symbol, PE ratio, GICS sector, and the location of headquarters. So those four columns, those four value are the value for my variables. So this is a data set. So this is a multivariate data set because we have more than 2 variables here. Okay. Now let's focus on the column D because we are practicing on the frequency distribution for the quantitative data. So in this data set, only PE ratio is quantitative data. The ticker symbol, GICS sector, location of headquarter. So they are all categorical data, right? So for the first frequency distribution we're going to practice here, you only can analyzing the PE ratio. Okay, so before we start, like I said, in the homework and also test, I always telling you how this frequency distribution should look like. Basically, I will let you know how the classes should look like. So we're gonna just use the classes already defined in our PowerPoint as example. So the classes, the first class is around 0 to 10, and then second class 10 to 20. And 50 to 60, etc., right? So to work on this data on Excel, you need to identify 3 information. Okay, so it's a little bit different from your textbook, so make sure you follow what I'm teaching you here. So the first information we needed is the smallest value of all classes. Oops. Okay. Smallest value of all classes. And then the second is the largest value of all classes. And then the last one is called the class width, or you can call it interval width in our PowerPoint. Okay, so we need to identify these 3 values before I show you how we are able to creating the frequency distribution. Okay, so the smallest value of all classes. So let's look at the PowerPoint here. So the smallest value among all classes, so that is 0. Okay, and then the largest value among all classes is 60. Okay, so we have these two value, 0 and 60. We need these two information. And then the next is, what is my class width? I teach you how to do the calculation, right? We're using next class upper limit minus previous class upper limit, or you can use the next class lower limit minus the previous class lower limit. So 20 minus 10, or 10 minus 0, 30 minus 20, or 20 minus 10. They all give me the same class width that is equal to 10. Again, that's why I'm talking about the class width should be the same, right? So now after I have the information for all 4 tables, okay, these 4 tables, and then I can start creating frequency distribution. Like I said, the method I'm teaching you here is given you already know how the classes should set up. So we are not from the beginning, hey, let's figure out the classes first and then figure out class width. So we already predefine the frequency distribution we're looking for. Okay, now what I want you to do is select your PE ratio column. Okay, so after you follow me to select this PE ratio column, and we are going to insert. Okay, we are going to use insert, and then going to click the pivot table. Oh, sorry, just click the pivot table on the top here. And then once you do that, so we are creating a new worksheet, okay? Because in this, basically, we will have a new worksheet created for us to place our frequency distribution on it, okay? Okay, so this is what you are saying for our pivot table. So this is a new sheet called sheet 6. And on the right hand side, you are able to see called the pivot table field, and that is what we're going to use to creating this frequency distribution. Okay, let me zoom myself smaller. Okay, now I will click under the pivot table field. You will be able to see the PE ratio. So the reason you see the PE ratio is because when you initially select the data, you include the label. So it is very, very important. Every time you use pivot table method to creating anything, you must including this PE ratio. Okay, now you must including your labels. Okay, without including the label, your pivot table will be totally incorrect. Again, I want to emphasize one more time. If you are gonna using pivot table on Excel to creating any tables, you must including the label of your data. Okay. Without that label, data label, and then your pivot table will be totally incorrect. So for my attendance check, I will make sure I will check you pay attention on this part, what I just said. Okay, so now I have the PE ratio here. I'm gonna left click the mouse, hold it, and drag it down to rows. Okay, as you can see on the left hand side here, okay, I immediately creating the Excel creating this new column A. All the number are the unique number for you can find from your original data set. So basically we see the P ratio equal to 7 and 9. And so there is no duplicate because they are creating the unique. So they are just the labels. So at this point, they treat each unique value as a class, so which is not what we are looking for, right? So we need to do more adjustment. And now, second, we're going to click this PE ratio again and drag it down to values. Okay, so when we are dragging this PE ratio to the values, that will allow us to creating this second column, right? We have one column is my classes, and then the second column here would be my frequencies. Okay, so it's intent to creating the frequencies, but as you look at whatever inside here now is not frequency, so they are the sum of that data value. So that's one thing, one adjustment we need to do. So how you do that? So instead of summing the value, we need to counting how many data are in 7, 9, 10, etc. Right? So to do that, going to choose one of the value under the sum of the PE ratio here, choose one of them, right click the mouse, and going to summarize value by, and currently by default they use a sum, we need to change to count. Okay, so after we do that change, all the number in this column become our frequency, right? They're on frequency. But this still does not look like what we're looking for, because what we're looking for, we have classes, right? The first class is 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, etc., right? So now we are treating each observation as a unique class. So that's not right. What we need to do is we need to creating those classes. So to do that, we are grouping my individual values. So we are going to pick one of the value under the row labels, right click the mouse, and I'm going to call the group. So thinking about when you're creating those bins, you are grouping those unique values together, right? So we're going to choose group. So from here, they need the 3 values, starting at, ending at, and by. So what are those 3 values? So those 3 values are, let me go back, are related to this 3 value we identified. Starting with is the smallest value of all classes. Ending at is the value for the largest value of all classes. And the by value is the class width. Okay, so basically that 3 blank will be 0, 60, and 10. Okay, let me go back here. And go into the row label, choose one of them, right click the mouse, say group. So 0, 60, and the class width is 10. So after you do that, 0, 60, and 10 for this specific case, and then you can click OK. Okay, so now you will notice that we are creating this PE ratio are exactly the same as what we did here. One thing you might notice that for our first class 0 to 9, 10 to 19, 20 to 29. Why is that? Because in Excel, they try to including both lower and upper limit. On our PowerPoint here, it's a 0 are included, but 10 is not included. So basically the classes are the same. It's just whether you representing as a smaller and equal to the upper limit, or you only had the smaller to the upper limit. So, but if you look at the frequency here, 2, 24, 11, 4, 1, 2. So they are the exactly same value as you see here. Okay, so this is my frequency distribution, right? So now we're going to calculate, it's called the relative frequency. So for the relative frequency, as we already learned that we need to use the frequency divided by the total sample size. So therefore, we just use Excel to do the calculation here. Okay, so here will be equal to, we are not typing 2. We select the value from the already counted value. We select the value from 2, and then divided by 44. Because the denominator is my sample size. As we know, here is representing my sample size. And I push enter. Okay, so we got 0.04545. And so for the, and then the next, we are equal to 24 divided by 44. Next, 11 divided by 44. Next, 4 divided by 44. Next, 1 divided by 44. Next, 2 divided by 44. Okay, so you can try if you sum, means you adding all of them together. If you sum all of them together, like I mentioned in the lecture, you should get 1. Otherwise, there's some calculation error. Okay, so this is my relative frequency. Now, next, I want to show you how you are able to get the percent frequency distribution. So the reason I like the pivot table method, because it's very easy to get in the cumulative percent frequency distribution without further calculation. Okay, so for the percent frequency distribution, you definitely can just get in this relative and the times 100%, right? The percent. So you can just equal to the value you just calculated for the relative frequency times 100, and then push enter. Select this value again, and then move the mouse to the right down corner, and then drag it. Okay, so this is my percent frequency. These are the exactly value you see for our percent frequency, right? And then, of course, for the cumulative frequency distribution, And then so the first class is equal to less than equal to 9. So that's just literally what we have already here. And then the second class is less than equal to 19. So therefore we are adding the first class to the second class to getting the cumulative frequency second class value. And the next one is equal to the first class plus the second class plus the third class, because the third class is less than equal to 29, right? And the next one is the, you can use the sum, because you basically sum means you adding everything together, right? So you're summing everything onto your fourth class here, because the fourth class for the cumulative frequency distribution is less than 39. Okay, now we can do the same for the rest. Sum. Okay, here they go. This is my cumulative frequency distribution, right? If you compare that with our PowerPoint, and then we got the same values, right? 226, and then except for 41, 42, 44. Okay. Now the next is the cumulative percent. Okay, so basically we are using every of the cumulative frequency divided by the sample size. Here is 44 times 100 to get the cumulative percent, right? So we will push enter. And then so we are able to use the drag down function, select this value, and then move the mouse to the right down corner and then drag it down. Okay, so this is my cumulative percent frequency distribution. Okay, so this is one method. You literally follow each formula to calculate one by one. So the other method you can use, since we're creating our pivot table, now the frequency distribution use the pivot table method, and then you can do is go under the count of the P ratio. So you already got the frequency, right? Going to those value, let's say I'm gonna pick 0 to 9, this 2, and then right click the mouse, and we are going to call the show value as. So keep in mind when you pick the percent of grand total. Okay, let me pick this one. Okay, the second one under the no, right under the no calculation. So that will give us this frequency called the percent frequency distribution. Okay, so this is our percent frequency distribution. Wait, let me make sure I'm not changing any of those values. I'm gonna paste it only as number. Okay. So let me change it again. Show value as a percent of grand total. So if you look at this percent of grand total, the value here are exactly the same as we see this percent frequency distribution, right? Because that is the percent of the grand total give us the percent frequency distribution. Now let's change this again. We click the one value under the frequency here. Right click the mouse, go call the show value as, called the run total in. Okay, run total in. And then basic field will be P ratio, don't worry about it. Just click OK. Now you see 2, 26, 37, 41. So that is our cumulative frequency distributions value, exactly the same, right? Again, so the value we chose is called running total in. When you chose running total in, that will give you the cumulative frequency distribution. Okay, next, right click the mouse, show value as percent of running total in. And then if you look at the value here, that is exactly the same as a cumulative percent frequency distribution, right? So if you want to get a cumulative percent frequency distribution, when you right click the mouse here, right click the value, right click the mouse, you need to choose percent running total in. So percent running total in. So that is how you are able to obtain the cumulative percent distribution using the pivot table method. Okay, so again, here I'm talking about how to creating the pivot frequency distribution using the original formula method, or you can use the pivot table and to make changes on your frequencies, and you are able to very easily, based on frequency distribution, to get a percent frequency, cumulative frequency, and a cumulative percent frequency distribution. And so you should leveraging this method to work on your homework assignment due this week.